We're going to start with some transfer news and the big news of the past 24 hours, and that is Newcastle United's interest in the Inter Milan midfielder Nicolò Barella, the man who started the Champions League final, a really big elite player. And we know Newcastle United are in the market for elite players. Eddie Howe has been very clear about that. What's your latest understanding in the interest for Nicolò Barella?
Yeah, it was a move that sort of came out of the blue late on Wednesday, obviously reported by a couple of outlets. We've checked it out, and it looks like there is interest from Newcastle United side. Very, very early days. I don't think there's any deal close yet, and I think it'll take a lot of persuading both Inter Milan and the player to jump ship. But certainly, it's a fantastic statement of intent. If we were sort of a bit unsure as to which players Newcastle United would target this summer, I think we've been given a very big glimpse behind the curtain at the type of player that they're trying to bring in. And sort of all this debate we've been having about whether it'll be 5 or 6 sort of, players to bring in to our depth. I think it will be, 2 or 3 big names. And look, Barella would be, arguably one of the biggest that they could get as well.
He would probably be the biggest signing of the new era, a massive player, held in such high regard across Europe. But if you speak to those kind of over in Italy, they think £50 million is going to get you one leg of Barella, not the full body, because he's rated that highly. Now, we saw this, didn't we, previously with the likes of Isak and Botman and Bruno to a certain extent, where media from those respective countries from where they're joining from or potentially joining from play it down. Always likely that you were going to get reports from Italy playing this one down, but Newcastle United like to drive a hard bargain. They know they need to improve the position which Barella plays in. I mean, this has got legs, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, as you say, the Italian media are very, very quick to play that down. Inter Milan, very quick themselves to internally say that, nothing's advanced. They haven't really agreed a fee, that, there's no agreement made with the player. I think, which is a big thing as well, given that, he didn't start his career at Inter Milan, but he's a boyhood Inter Milan fan. He's spoken a lot of times about it being his dream to, hopefully win the title with this team. So yeah, look, it would be a big move. I think, this is no disrespect to Isak or Botman or Bruno, but it would certainly be the biggest move, as you say, of the new era. Not just a sort of player who's been impressed in Europe. This is a player who started in the Champions League final. A player who, starts week in, week out for Italy, whenever Italy play, played in the European Championship final. It's a huge name, very, very attractive player, 26 years of age. He can play in a number of midfield roles. I think the only sticking point is, are Newcastle at that stage in their journey where they can attract someone like Barella, and 2, can they persuade him to maybe jump ship at a club that he absolutely loves?
Yeah, I mean, that is the big question. And Italy do play this evening, so I haven't checked the squads, but I'm assuming he's in that squad and likely to start. So whatever channel that game is on tonight against Spain, I'm assuming that if they looked at where the TV viewing figures were from, you'd probably find half of them on Tyneside looking at hopefully their next edition. But yeah, we've got Steve here saying, seen ambition at least, even if it doesn't come off. We've got Johnny saying, a massive player. He's only 5'8". I meant massive in terms of his status in the game, Johnny, but very good there. Stephen says, keep up the good work. I don't know if he's talking about us on Newcastle United, but we'll take it. Thank you very much, Stephen. And Brian says, I like the fact that they're coming up with possibilities that haven't been touted for us previously. And yeah, I mean, look, previously, it's always been the same pool, hasn't it? It's always been the same kind of names. And we always talk about how they like this list they've got. They don't get them, they'll come back in for them. Botman, they're going to do the same with Madison, it looks like. But this is a name that has relatively come out of the blue, isn't it? And it will excite Newcastle United fans.
Yeah, it certainly has come out of the blue, and I do have to maybe wonder as to why that is. I think it probably won't help Newcastle's cause, that it's out there now and that they're potentially trying to sign him for 50 million. I'm sure you're going to get other Premier League teams all of a sudden, contacting Inter Milan to see if a deal's possible. But I think Steve, hits the nail on the head in the comments there. The fact that they're showing this type of ambition to try and sign a player of that stature at this stage of their, sort of revolution, it would be huge. And look, whether they even get her or not, just the fact that they're being all of a sudden linked with these type of players is a huge, huge positive. I think one thing I noticed last night is that there was obviously a lot of shock and a lot of surprise and, a lot of excitement over a name of this quality. And I think it's maybe just reaffirmed that Eddie Howe was being serious when he said he wanted to sign elite players this summer and players that are going to, bolster and improve this starting 11. And look, whether it's Barella or not, I think they're gonna surprise a lot of people this summer.
Now, his agent, Barella's agent, has come out and said that there have been no talks, but then you think he's hardly likely to come out and say, yes, there have been extensive talks. This is just the way transfers work, and like you say, there may be other agendas at play here. What do you think, though, when the talks potentially do happen? What is he being sold? What is he being sold by Steve Nixon or by Dan Ashworth, Eddie Howe? What is he being sold to join Newcastle United? Because moving from Inter Milan, one of the biggest clubs in Italy, one of the biggest clubs in Europe, obviously Champions League final, to Newcastle United, who, yes, have qualified for the Champions League. Yes, if you're on Tyneside, it's all you think about, every single hour of the day. But outside of Tyneside, they're not in that kind of elite group. Yes, they've qualified for the Champions League, but will they manage to do that again next season? They're fighting on four fronts. It's going to be difficult. Can't guarantee they are going to qualify for the Champions League again. So what are they being? What is he being told? What is he being sold to join Newcastle United, do you think?
Look, I think it's probably been pointed to the fact that the likes of Kieran Trippier and other players have jumped ship from, arguably bigger clubs, and look at the, the name that they've made for themselves here. I think he'll have been sold that it is a, he's probably getting in at not the ground floor, but at a very, very low level of what it's going to be an exciting journey. Obviously, the fact that they're going to be playing Champions League football next season is a huge pull for any player, let alone someone like Barella. And look, they're becoming a huge name now, not just in Italy but across the globe. And I think players know that. I don't think they'll need too much selling anymore. Whereas back in the day, 5-10 years ago, you probably need to sell it as right. This is a stepping stone to, an Arsenal or a Manchester United. Deals that we probably saw with like Debussy and Kabay, where they came and they knew they weren't going to stay. Whereas now, Newcastle probably don't need to sell it as much as they used to. And yeah, look, as Steve says again in the comments, you would be joining one of the biggest teams in the world. Maybe not yet, but certainly in a couple of years, you'll have got in at the ground floor of what's going to be a very, very exciting time.
Yeah, Steve says the project join what will be one of the biggest teams in the world. And another Steve, and we've got an absolute group of Stevens in the comments today. Smoke screen for the big fish lads. He'd be class, but we need to play in the Champions League every season to get players like him. And that was the point I was making. If you're going to sign these elite players, then you're probably going to have to sell them something really special when you haven't got the guarantee of playing in the Champions League week in, week out. But of course, as Aaron says there, the fact you've got Champions League for the next season might be a big enough draw for them in the first place. To coin a phrase, says Greg's pasties. Someone will inevitably say, show them the bridges. I'm waiting for that comment to come in. Yes, if you are watching, Nicolò, we've got a fantastic set of bridges down on the quayside. Just come and join just for that. It'd be brilliant.